Hey everyone, this is going to be a quick video showing you some issues with this Hanwei Shobuzukuri Raptor. This sword belongs to Eric Hussein. He's a good buddy of mine. The link to his channel will be down in the description. Awesome guy, does great videos. But anyways, he sent me this sword that I got in the mail yesterday. And first thing I do whenever I work on a sword is I inspect the sword. So I'm going to have to be careful because the sword doesn't have Mekugi right now. The first thing I noticed when I first picked up this sword is that it feels end heavy. I then compared this to my Shobuzukuri Raptor, and it is. And there's multiple reasons why this sword is end heavy. The point of balance on this sword is about 5 inches from the tsuba. To give you an idea, mine has a point of balance of under 4 inches. It's about 3 7/8 or something like that. So this sword is over an inch more end heavy than mine. Now that may not sound like much, but it's significant feeling. The reason why this sword is so end heavy is because number one, the blade on this sword is very thick. I took a micrometer out and measured this one, and it's 8.1 millimeters thick as opposed to mine, which is 6.8 millimeters thick. That's quite a difference on a 29-inch blade. There's a lot of problems with this sword. Right now you'll notice there's some space right there between the seppa and the habaki right there. That's because I don't have the tsuba all the way seated on this blade so that I can take the sword fully apart right now. You'll notice that fuchi is not centered. Even if I push this way, there's overhang. The reason for that is because when this is pulled down, and this tsukamaki is very loose. I mean, I shouldn't be able to pull this down like this, but I can. You'll notice that there's a lot more material here than here. And as a result, it's sticking out. So that's the first issue. Second one, the tsukamaki on here, as I said, it's very loose. So now with the fuchi off, look how loose this is. That's extremely loose. I've never seen a Raptor with such a loose tsukamaki. On top of that, the samegawa, which is the ray skin, is really splotchy. It's kind of yellow up here, and then it's really splotchy here, kind of off-white with some yellow spots to it, and then it gets more white towards the bottom. The whole thing is splotchy. There's parts that are more pure white, parts that are more off-white, and parts that are more yellow. The tsukamaki is very uneven. As you can see, it's not good at all. On this side, you can actually see wood around here. Now keep in mind, this sword has not been used a lot. You can tell by the fittings. The fittings are practically brand new. There's only a little bit of finish taken off of there and a little bit on the end here, but other than that, these fittings are still very new looking. Also, the Ito appears to be wider than on previous generations of Raptors, which isn't a problem in and of itself. The end knots are on the wrong sides, which on a katate maki is actually pretty easy to fix as you're wrapping it. It's not the most difficult thing in the world. Now, as if that's not bad enough, I took the ska off, and what's the first thing I see? A crack right there. So that's not good. That's going to have to be fixed. The grain is all messed up. This side is pretty good, this side is not. This side, the grain is running with the piece of wood. This should be going like that. The grain should be very much like this, the whole way down when you're having the edge facing down. So when it's edged down, the grain on this side should be going this way, and the grain on this side should be going that way. When I did finally get the ska off, these popped out. These are shims, and In and of itself, shims aren't the worst thing in the world, but these weren't even glued in. They were set on the tang, put in there, and they just left them there. They didn't even glue them. They didn't even cut the ends, as you can see. They just broke that. They just snap and put it right in there. So the tsuba is on very tight, just as it is on most Hanwei swords. I don't have a problem with that. I would much rather a tsuba that's too tight than one that's too loose. Tight, you can fix with just a file. Loose is more complicated to fix. The habaki is very uneven. In fact, there's even a crack in it right there. And it's pretty sloppy there. In fact, on the back, the center of the habaki is not lined up with the center of the blade. Now, as if that's not bad enough, it does get worse. First off, look how skinny this nakago gets. It gets very skinny towards the end. I suspect what happened is when they were putting the sword together, the sword probably wasn't going in the ska, and whoever put this together just took a grinder to that. And now for the really ridiculous thing, which I've been trying to cover up as best I can to, I guess for shock, I suppose. That Mekugi hole is going straight off the nakago, which is the tang. There is no excuse for any of this. And that skinny tang combined with this really thick blade is why this thing is so end heavy. But on top of that, that Mekugi hole going off the tang, that's not acceptable. It looks like what happened was whoever it was started to drill the hole, it started drifting, and then it just went right off the end. As you can see, there is an obvious drift mark. There was a burr right here, which I took off with a file for safety. They probably didn't even take this sword apart to check it. I can tell you that because when I took the ska off and I did this, pieces of wood dust and metal shavings were coming out. So more than likely, they put the sword together after grinding on the tang to make it fit in there, and they just drilled it right on through, didn't even check it. And when they ground that tang, this here got so loose that if this is on here, you'll notice that from here, it just falls right off. Another thing is the second Mekugi hole is a little bit more towards the kashra than on mine, but on a mass-produced sword, that's to be expected. Not a big deal. There are even burrs on the habaki. That's how bad this is put together. The bevels on the habaki are not even on this sword. And on top of all of this, the saya, as you can see, is loose. This sword should not be able to come out that easily. So, this sword, it has just all kinds of problems with it. Even when the sword's apart, you can see gapping right there. That shouldn't be there at all. The fit between the horn and the saya right here, there's some serious gapping right there. I mean, that's my fingernail going under there. Also, interestingly, this saya is a bit different than my own. The saya on my Raptor is about an inch shorter than this one. Now, once again, mass-produced sword. Some of these things are bound to happen. But on top of that, this saya is just very loose. It twists. It wobbles. It's just not right. Another difference between this one and mine is that the saya on this one seems to be just a little bit more glossy than on my Raptor. Also, the Mekugi on this sword were not fully seated when I took this sword out of the box, and this sword has never been taken apart other than by me. So they didn't even get the Mekugi pounded in the whole way. Another odd thing is that when putting the ska back on, it's catching on something inside there. It's catching and then it goes past it. I don't know what it is. I think it's a little sliver of wood or something, but it's in there and it's pretty deep. It's about down to here. Now, when this sword is compared to mine, as I said, my sword doesn't have these issues, and mine is much older. Now, my sword is from 2011 or 2012, I don't quite remember, but it was around that time frame. This sword is from 2017, so this sword is a couple years old. Mine is 7 or 8 years old. And it seems that Hanwei has lowered their quality. I mean, most of these mistakes, I don't even see in a Masahiro. And that says something. Hanwei usually makes very good swords. I don't see half of these mistakes on a Masahiro. That's not saying that Masahiros are the best swords in the world, but that's just going to show the quality of this Hanwei. It's horrible. So Eric is going to contact Hanwei, and between the two of us, we'll be keeping you all posted about what's happening with this sword. This sword was bought a couple years ago, and generally speaking, the warranty is only a year. But with some of this, there's no excuse at all. This should have been caught by quality control. The sword here should not have made it past quality control, but it did. And not only did it make it past quality control, but it made it past basically 2 sets of quality control. Because generally speaking, Cult of Athena also checks these swords. And this sword was bought from Cult of Athena. So, obviously Hanwei's the one to blame, but Cult of Athena, I think you guys need to be tightening up your quality control. Maybe, just maybe, take the swords apart before you send them. And make sure that this doesn't happen again. Another issue is that the ito on this sword is very thick. So, on a normal sword, this wouldn't necessarily be a problem. However, Hanwei already makes their swords with pretty thick handles. So then on top of that, having the thicker handle, it now has thicker ito, which is making a really big feeling ska in the hand. It's very thick feeling. Now the thickness of this ska isn't horrible for me because my hands are so big. However, most people don't have hands as big as mine. I can wear large to extra large gloves, generally speaking extra large. So as a result, it's no surprise that a ska this thick feels good for me. But most people don't have hands the size of mine. So as a result, this here is not good for most people. So that's pretty much it. Now I definitely cannot recommend a Shobuzukuri Raptor, and with most of these issues, probably not any of the Raptors. Eric Hussein and myself will be keeping you updated on the sword. As I said, if you're not subscribed to Eric Hussein, definitely check out his channel. He does awesome content, and he will be keeping you updated on the sword along with me. So, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'll see you next video. See ya.